I'm Etna Carlo, and I'm on the pros of minimum wage. Here are some facts. Families will get out of poverty, reduce how many people are in federal assistance programs, allows families to improve their standard of living. 3.8 million workers in 2011 were paid at or below minimum wage. People who live on minimum wage spend all the money they make on bills and food and other essential necessities. 2/3 of all minimum wage workers are women. If an employee is subject to both federal and state minimum wage, the employee will get higher of the two. In Tennessee, the state minimum wage is $7.25, same as the federal minimum of Americans, including 45% of Republicans support a minimum wage increase to $10.10 over the next 3 years. All these facts state the federal and the state government should increase minimum wage. As Roman Mikulski put it, I thought in this country the best social program was a job, yet minimum wage jobs aren't paying enough to keep families out of poverty. Sadly, the statement holds true. Even in Tennessee, 7.8% of the workforce earns at or below the minimum wage. The highest proportion of minimum wage workers in the country, according to the Bureau of Statistics. Increasing minimum wage will reduce how many people are in federal assistance programs, allows families to improve their standard of living, and increase consumer spending. Increasing the minimum wage would reduce how many people are in federal assistance programs and poverty. According to Heritage.org, when talking about the index dependence of government, it said, America is increasing, moving away from a nation of self-reliant individuals, where civil societies flourish, towards a nation of individuals less inclined to practicing self-reliance and personal responsibility. Government programs not only crowd out civil societies, but too frequently trap individuals and families in long-term dependency, leaving them incapable of escaping the conditions for generations to come. I don't know about popular opinion, but that is not the America I know, but a self-dependent one that can strive on its own. But we cannot begin until minimum wage increase as Americans become self-dependent. We should also increase minimum wage to improve our standard of living. Statistics show 2/3 of minimum wage workers are women, and globally and in America, also women are the primary providers for their children. But without the increase of minimum wage, children and families are deprived of their essential necessities. Due to legislators turning a wide nose away from the issues that plague our country the most. Most but not all government officials have tried living off minimum wage and felt the struggles as so many Americans do. For example, a senator from Florida tried the experiment. Tried to experiment to see if people can really live off minimum wage, and his conclusions was such. There's a time, some 40 years ago, when a single parent earning the minimum wage was actually above the poverty line, but the wage has long stopped keeping pace with inflation. If it had, the floor
You can keep going.
the floor for wages today would be about $10 an hour. Workers like John White say, "It is by the grace of God that I'm meeting ends meet," said White, who was out of work for 20 months before he got his current part-time job delivering pizzas. It is an absolute pity how such a great nation cannot take care of the least of these. Increasing minimum wage can help better the economy. With more money in our pockets, citizens can spend more money on expensive items in local stores and businesses, and our sales tax can go into government programs like schools, hospitals, and infrastructure, and increasing our GDP per capita. In conclusion, better the economy can help all of us in the long run. Thank you.
Today, my team, Lane Grizard, Scott Ayers, Cindy Smith, and I, Kaylee Morosco, are here today to defend increasing minimum wage. Minimum wage is the lowest amount that employers can legally pay workers per hour of labor. minimum wage laws began in 1939 and continue today. However, conflicts have risen over the years due to increased minimum wage proposals. There are several reasons why minimum wage should not be increased. Studies have shown that minimum wage does not reduce poverty, instead increases poverty. Minimum wage increases poverty because the company can no longer afford to pay workers the increased amount of minimum wage. Therefore, the company lays off employees both the minimum wage and above, or raises the cost of their products. The result is increasing minimum wage will increase the amount of people in poverty. According to Reporter News from March 2014, there are 3 types of people that are the main workers earning minimum wage: teenagers, working their first jobs, elderly people, making extra income, and poverty-level workers around the age of 25. There is recent research that shows higher minimum wages could reduce teenage education and decrease workers' long-term earnings. By raising minimum wage, you're not just targeting teenagers, elderly, or poverty level workers alone, you are targeting everyone who is paid minimum wage. It is difficult to predict that the complete effect would be from increasing minimum wage from $7.25 to $10.10 per hour. Some markets may be economically stable enough to absorb the change, while other markets may struggle, like big businesses versus small businesses. Small businesses might struggle due to increased minimum wage, but big businesses might be able to support. The markets who will most likely suffer due to increased minimum wage will have thin profit margins and might therefore cut their workforce or raise the prices of their goods. Increasing minimum wage causes companies to be at risk. The Congressional Budget Office report of 2012 showed that a wage increase could lead to the loss of about 500,000 jobs. The report also found that increasing minimum wage would cause about 900,000 people to remain in poverty. Forbes magazine from February 2012 states that there has not been an argument stating that increase in minimum wage increases the number of unemployed workers who are searching for jobs. Opponents of increase say that time, energy, and money will be more efficiently and effectively spent improving education and job training programs that would give people a better opportunity of getting out of their minimum wage jobs and into better paying careers. Opponents of minimum wage, such as Republicans and small business owners, believe that it can cause the price of inflation because businesses must raise their prices to accommodate the higher employees' wages. That is, they also agree and believe that it also discourages further the education of poverty-level earners. If they can make more money without continuing their education, then they'll work instead of continuing training or education. For example, a teacher with a college education, his average salary is about twice that of someone who works in a food services for a minimum wage without a college education. About 2/3 of today's minimum wage workers are in service industry jobs and half of the food services jobs. In conclusion, the minimum wage increase does not reduce poverty, it increases unemployment, and it hurts small businesses. Increase in minimum wage does not encourage education or job training for those employees at poverty level. It only affects a small percentage of minimum wage earners. Raising the minimum wage affects everyone and is not overall in a positive way. Thank you.
My name is Trey Campbell.
And my name is Amanda Allison. I'm on the side of
Rose.
Go ahead and do just one at a time, okay?
All right. We have 17 million reasons why the minimum wage should be raised. There are 17 million children in the United States that are not getting the food, water, and shelter they need because their parents do not make enough money. By raising the minimum wage, their parents would be able to make more money, therefore cutting down that number of 17 million. Our second reason is that raising the minimum wage helps women. Women make up 2/3 of the people that would be affected by the raising of the minimum wage, therefore making themselves dependent on them. Our third reason is that it would help families pay off debt. The more money they make means the more money they would be able to pay off their debts and not file bankruptcy. Our fourth reason is that it helps the economy. The more money people make, the more money they'd be able to spend. Therefore, the money would circulate around the economy, and that would put the economy back on track. One of our final reasons that is, it's just the right thing to do. No American deserves to work for 40 or more hours and still live in poverty. The money they would make would not make them rich, but it would help them get back on their feet. These are all some of the reasons why minimum wage should be raised.
Just add a little bit, please.
All right. What were some of y'all's questions or negatives about it? Did y'all have any negatives about raising it? You said it would add more poverty, right? Well, the more money that the people would make would help give the families more money. Therefore, they would become out of poverty and they'd have the things that they would need for life.
That is, and I'm first going to start on what he just said. If you increase minimum wage, it will not decrease the amount of poverty. It will increase it because now job owners will not be able to pay the workers and will probably end up firing workers or just not being able to pay them and making the job go out of business. So it will just, the economy might just crash again. Also, some workers cannot even do work that is worse than minimum wage because, for example, at co-op, people fill bags with feed that's not even probably worth minimum wage because it's such a simple job. So they don't really need minimum wage. It's probably just an extra job or a second job that they can have to gain a little bit of extra money. With minimum wage, it's usually in fast food restaurants or jobs that are simple, and this is mostly like a stepping stone for getting into the job business. So, and it's not something you live on. So minimum wage shouldn't be something you rely on for your whole entire life. So it shouldn't be something that you live on. Also, with increased minimum wage, it will increase taxes since a lot of taxes are based on the amount of income you gain. And also, the taxes will not come back to the workers since a lot of it will go into Social Security, which will probably be gone because the baby boom will take out the Social Security, likely. Also, you said something about it will increase responsibility in workers. Why would it increase the responsibility whenever they have no motivation to do it, since they're doing the exact same job? They're just getting a higher pay. It would probably just decrease the motivation and likely responsibility in doing this. So they don't really have a way really working. Any questions? Any questions?
I think you're good on that.
My name is Amanda Allison, and we're on the side of pro-increasing minimum wage. You just said how the owners will not be able to pay their employees if they increase the minimum wage. That is not true because if they increase the minimum wage, the owners are getting more money by them coming in, so they're going to they can pay their employees more. some people cannot afford to go to college, so they cannot get a higher paying job because they can't afford that education, or they may just not be smart enough to get the education. So they have to rely on those minimum wage jobs. So even though they shouldn't have to rely on them, they do. So they have to be able to live on some sort of money. So they have to work those minimum wage jobs no matter if they want to or not. So that the money should be increased because they need to be able to live and survive, get food and water and shelter and clothes, the necessities of life that they need.
Thank you.
My name is Lane Broussard, and I'm debating the con side of increasing minimum wage. They brought up a good point. Some people can't afford to go to college. Some people can't afford to risk what they have to go to college, but from personal experience, I can actually relate because my father, my mother, and also my stepfather all came from a family of poverty. They all were lucky if they had electricity to wake up to. They all were lucky if they had water. They all were lucky if they had a meal on their table every day. They did not get financial aid from their family members. They didn't get financial aid for college, yet they worked. They worked to get a professional job, to be well above average salary today in America. So it is very possible if you try and work hard enough to get out of the poverty line, not just relying on a minimum wage job. Now, also they brought up that a lot of people work over 40 hours. This is actually a false accusation of minimum wage workers. 2/3 to 3/4 of minimum wage workers actually do not work over 35 hours a week. So, with that being said, most of these workers are working part-time jobs. So the question you have to ask yourself is, does this hurt or does it help the economy? At first it may sound like a great idea. More money, everyone's happy. But as the saying goes, you can't always judge a book by its cover. So let's break down our workforce. According to the American Action Forum, about 3.2% of Americans that get hourly wages actually get paid the minimum wage. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, only 2.9% of all Americans right now are getting paid minimum wage. So is this actually affecting a majority in our country? Almost 80% of the minimum wage workers, which are already talking about a small percentage, and 80% as of right now are not in poverty. They're being supported by other financial aids. And according to the National Review, the majority of minimum wage workers are 16 to 24 years old. This is around high school and college age. So this means that they are more likely to be supported by financial aid from their family. So is this really greatly affecting our poverty-stricken families of America that we're trying to target? Another noteworthy point is that companies would have to pay workers more. This may sound like a great idea, but once you get the $10.10 minimum wage, add on Obamacare, which is going to affect in the next few years, add on benefits, pensions for retirement, things that companies should offer to their workers, they are going to end up paying towards $12 to $15 for each worker an hour. So with that being said, they're going to have to go into action and do something about it. They're going to have to find solutions for this. One of those could be raising the prices on their products up, which affects all Americans. So we're back at the original problem. Are we really making progress, or are we just going back to stage one, the origin of this problem? When young people get the mentality that they don't need a professional job, that they can go off of a minimum wage entry-level job, then are they going to want a professional job? This leads to the downfall of industries and fields such as the healthcare field, where we need people to support our country to keep our country healthy, to keep the people healthy. So if people keep at an entry-level job, that's just going to decrease the mentality that they want to get a professional job. So now we go back to the beginning. Does it help or does it actually hurt our nation and our economy? Thank you.
My name is Zoe Lorraine, and I am pro increasing minimum wage. Alright. In conclusion, raising the minimum wage would be good for families. It would raise the income of nearly 17 million Americans. It could feed 17 million children. Since women usually get paid less than men, they particularly would benefit. Many single women today are struggling, and with an increase in minimum wage, they can feel more independent, get back on their feet, and maybe get enough to go to school and get more education to get a job that pays enough for them to live on. But they'll still need to have enough money to live off before they get a good enough education for them to get paid a good amount of money. We could better the economy raising the minimum wage. If people made more money, then they could soon retire, go back to school, or have children, which could lead to more job openings. 3.8 million workers were paid minimum wage in 2011. Those 3.8 million barely have enough to pay bills and gas. Increase the minimum wage would increase the standards of living for millions of people. Think about the 17 million children who don't get enough to eat because their parents can't buy them food. Think about the women who unfairly get paid less than men. Workers in America deserve more than $7.25 an hour.
Okay, I'm Sydney Smith, and I am arguing against the increase of minimum wage. Okay, as they stated, they said that it would decrease the amount of poverty, but I'm going to put it in perspective as how it will work. So you'll have somebody working at McDonald's getting paid minimum wage for flipping burgers. So if we increase the minimum wage, they're getting paid more for doing the same job. But say they're doing a good job and they are going to get promoted. But if they get promoted to manager, then they're going to want to get paid more. So then we have to increase the price of, or the amount of money that they're making. So they're going to be doing more work, but if they don't get paid more, then what will be the point in it? So then how do we get that money? Then McDonald's, they'd have to end up raising the prices of all their food, or even cutting jobs, which will increase the amount of unemployment. So that leads back to the point of, you say that all the children that aren't getting their food, but if they're getting paid more, then they're still going to have to go and pay more for their food. So that probably wouldn't really solve the problem of unemployment or them not receiving the food they need. And I would also like to state that there has not been an argument stating that the increase in minimum wage increases the number of unemployed workers who are searching for jobs, because as I stated, in order to get that money, we're going to have to cut the amount of jobs for that one person get paid more, or just pay more and increase the prices in the products that we receive. So in conclusion, increasing the minimum wage would not decrease the amount of poverty or help our economy in any way, as we are already in debt. So in my opinion, we should not increase minimum wage. Thank you. It does not reduce poverty, it increases unemployment, and it hurts small businesses. Increasing minimum wage does not encourage education or job training for those employees at poverty level. It only affects a small percentage of minimum wage earners. Raising the minimum wage affects everyone and not in an overall positive way. So those who went to college, they worked hard for that, and then it's not really fair for them to be getting pay the same amount for someone who may not have worked hard. So for those who went to college and paid for that, then they need to, once they've worked hard for it, then they go and they get the money back that they've worked for and put into college.
Now, just take a moment or two and y'all can just kind of free for all. If y'all want to go back and forth, if anybody would like to just freely talk, you may spend a few times freely talking as I get my thoughts together. Audience, y'all continue to listen.
Okay, so they reflected a lot on the women of minimum wage, who work minimum wage. Well, out of these single parents, out of these single families that they're talking about, let's put it into a perspective of reality. So 80% of the minimum wage workers are below or not below the poverty line or at the poverty line. They're getting financial aid, as I added. This means 20% of minimum wage workers, which is already a really small fraction of our country's workforce, they're actually not a lot of women. Two-thirds of the people in poverty are not single families. Around 2/3. So this means that almost only about 1/3 are actually single families in poverty. This means that a very small fraction is actually going to benefit from this. And also another point to bring up, everyone knows how far our country is in debt. We went into a recession in the past years, and we're still trying to get out of this. And we're still trying to get on top to where we need to be. Well, is really increasing minimum wage, is that actually going to benefit? Is that actually going to put our country more into debt, or is it going to put it above, or is it going to increase the debt? Are we actually going to benefit? Is our economy going to benefit? Because right now, we're so far into debt, if we pay any more for our minimum wage workers, then our country as a whole is not going to benefit from this. This 2.9% of our workforce, not even all Americans, just our workforce, is going to benefit from this.
Okay, you guys, great answer. And y'all can do it together, however you want to, it doesn't matter. Yeah. How did y'all vote on it?
We voted it. What happened to when we voted it last year?
Like, I saw a score sheet that I could print out and we made it official, but I didn't.
Well, she made notes and then whoever voted not too much logic. And I might be wrong. I don't even have it. Well, we just had logic.
Okay, do y'all want to have a response there? Go ahead.
Okay, well, in 2011, 3.8 million workers were paid at below or at minimum wage also. And 2/3, like as we're going back to the woman thing, 2/3 of all minimum wage workers are women, and women are like, for globally and in America also, are the providers of, or the primary providers for their children. So if women cannot provide for their children, like, that's not a good thing, and that will raise the amount of money government has to spend, like on government, government helping assistance programs. Like, if women get paid more and stuff, like the government programs will like spend less money because more people will get out of like poverty and like have more money to spend and not have to rely on primarily on government assistance programs.
I know families who have minimum wage jobs that are not being able to provide for their families as much. Not just the women, the men too can do minimum wage jobs and not be able to provide for their whole family because they cannot go back to college because they're not making enough money in their job that they're at now. So even the older people who are working the minimum wage jobs are also not getting the sufficient amount of money to go back to school or be able to get a better paying job. They are living off of stuff like food stamps and the government money that they are giving them. So we should get them off that money so the government can stop spending all our tax money that we are paying as people who are actually working sufficient jobs, and we should start giving it to the people who need more money and working the non-sufficient jobs right now.
Also, another fact, it says in Tennessee, the state minimum wage is $7.25, which is the national average of minimum wage. Also, and it said, the same as federal minimum, Americans, including 45% of Republicans, support a minimum wage increase to $10.10 over the next 3 years. So when as our President Obama was trying to like increase the minimum wage to $10.10, it's not going to be like immediately. It's going to be over like.
Okay, so we also have another point about the depending of increasing minimum wage. There are about 58% of women who are earning minimum wage, and the majority of those women are single women who have children. Another point is that the United States of America offers an equal amount of opportunity for education. Everyone gets a chance and an opportunity to educate and go to college. They can get scholarships if they work hard to pay for their college. And when they go to college and earn their education and earn what they would make out of the education, then everyone gets an equal chance. And the effort that they put in is what they get out of it.
Okay, they said that the tax needs to go back to the people who need it, but if they increase the minimum wage, then the government's just gonna be getting more taxes from us, which those tax dollars will not be going back to them. And my question is where we're getting all this money if we're already in debt and we're gonna have to increase prices for all of our products, then how are we gonna pay for all of this?
And also, I know Amanda made a point about knowing families that are on minimum wage. I have experience with families like that. My mom is a principal at a low-income school, and I know a lot of parents who are working minimum wage right now, but they're getting support from outside people. They're getting support from ministries to feed their children. They're getting supports from local places that help them feed their children. So their children are getting the necessary nutrients they need, the necessary foods they need. So in reality, out of the over 3 million Americans in this country, a small portion of them are actually starving or not getting the food they need, a very small portion. And we can't risk our country going even further into debt because all this tax money is going back and circulating to the government, and the government has been, it hasn't been very successful in putting the tax money in the right place. We haven't been very successful, and it would not circulate around to the people. Like I said earlier, there's going to be $4 a person, or like per worker that the companies are going to have to pay $4 extra on top of the $10.10 that are going to be going to the government, and this is for hourly wages. It's not going to benefit the economy in any way. The money is not going to circulate around to everyone as they're saying. It's just going to drop even more.